And welcome back to Scarred for Life, the podcast where we open up old wounds by looking back at the films that scared us as kids. I'm Terry.
And I'm Mary Beth.
In each episode, our special guest and their pets bring with them a movie that traumatized them as a child.
This week, our guest is DeVaughn Taylor with a cameo appearance by his adorable French bulldog. He's a photographer and co-host of the Bloody Blunts Cinema Club podcast. Hello, DeVaughn. You're finally on the show. We're very excited.
Yes. Hello. I'm so excited. And yes, Cal and Harley are both pretty excited as well. Sorry about that. I don't even know how they know. I have headphones on, so it's like I don't even know how they anticipated that.
Like my cats know it too. It's like they just know, oh, you're not paying full attention to me. It's time to make a ruckus and like chaos.
Absolute chaos. Okay, so pets aside, let's take it back to the beginning. How did you get introduced to horror?
Well, I think it's when you get into horror pretty young, there's always somebody that kind of shepherds you through, I suppose. And so I had, it was my uncle and then also my mom. They were both big into horror and both introduced me to stuff way too young. I was about 7. Whenever I watched The Fly and Nightmare on Elm Street and Cube. So those are like the first 3 that I remember. I don't remember the specific order. Cube Rules was my backup choice for this episode.
I have never seen Cube.
Cube Rules. Okay. Cube Rules. It ruled. It walked so Saul could run. But that's a whole other conversation. And but yeah, so I started off with like that Nightmare on Elm Street, and then I remember my uncle being like, "Okay, like you like this stuff, so let me give you something like crazy." And then that's when The Fly came in. So it's like I got a pretty quick crash course, like very quickly.
I'm guessing the Cronenberg Fly, right?
Yes, Cronenberg's Fly. And yeah, that arm break scene was like, that's literally the scene that like got me hooked. Like that was like, as soon as I remember seeing that scene and like being like looking away, but then like I remember like literally wanting to rewind it and watch it again for some reason. I was like, why do I want to see this again? Like that was disgusting. And I think that was like kind of the moment where I was like very fascinated with horror. So I would just kind of go through our VHS collection. We had, between my parents and my uncle, like they both had like, vast collections. Not as much horror, but, I did go through and find the horrors that I could find. I grew up mainly with my younger sisters. And at the time, they were, if I'm, 8 or 9 watching these things, they're 5 or 6. So they can't really watch horror just yet. It's too scary for them, even though I would like kind of trick them into watching Blade. And
Blade fucking rules, so who cares?
Blade does rule.
Scary.
Blade does rule. And so I think what led me to my choice today was trying to find something that I could still watch with them that was still scary and exciting, but it wasn't directly horror. Though rewatching, I'm like, man, no, this is totally a horror movie.
We will get to that. Don't you worry.
Yeah. So, but I think this was a little safer, a little more fun for them to be able to watch with me, and like we would just all watch this together. And and I'm very excited to talk about it today.
So, what were some of your favorite horror movies growing up?
Growing up, again, like, Blade, you guys can go check out the psychoanalysis episode I just did and hear all about that. Blade was one that was in heavy rotation as a kid. And like I said, Nightmare on Elm Street, and and I kind of jumped around like between just like I really tried to like I would watch some haunted house stuff like the 1999 House on Haunted Hill or the 13 Ghosts remake. A great double feature right there.
Yes, iconic double feature.
Yeah, so it was like I would dabble into like the haunted house stuff, but then I would find myself being intrigued by like the sci-fi end, like The Fly or like Species. Way too young to watch Species when I did. Jeez,
wow.
Such a horny movie.
Very horny movie.
So I would really just like I would poke around to like all the different ones. I wasn't big into slashers as kids. I really didn't like grow my slasher appreciation till kind of recently. yeah, I would just kind of poke around and just again, it was just kind of whatever spoke to me off the VHS shelf, or if I was lucky enough to get my own horror pick from Blockbuster, I was usually outvoted because of younger siblings. But on those times, that's whenever I was like, ooh, okay, now I can really like find something fun to dig into.
Yeah. So you watched a lot of horror movies as a kid, but were you ever scared? Like, were you a scared kid at all about these movies or in general?
I mean, early on, yeah, definitely for sure. But I definitely feel like I'm one of those people, since I started off young, that the fear kind of wore off. And then it became like more just trying to find like the most interesting, weirdest like imagery, just like what is like, and trying to find something that fascinated me, but I still would get the thrill, like I definitely, I mean, I still, now get the thrill of watching, but I guess I don't get scared anymore per se. And now it's just, kind of more about exploring like, all these different ideas. Once I kind of credit It Follows is the movie that kind of made me change my thinking about horror movie. It went away from, trying to find the thrill of it to like, I was like, oh my gosh, like these are the storytelling like possibilities that horror offers. And like there's horror movies about like things and themes and stuff, and they are presented, in very unique ways. And like it was just a movie that I was just like, it was kind of the movie that, inspired me to start thinking like, I think I want to make horror movies at some point, because like it just seeing the, there's just no rules. There's no rules in horror. So as far as a genre that, affects you viscerally and emotionally, but then also just has these wild storytelling abilities. Like, I mean, there's just no better genre,
I agree.
It's true.
So aside from the movie that we are talking about today, I know that there were a couple others that probably scared you as a kid. What do you have any brief stories about other movies besides what we're talking about that terrified you as a kid?
I do. I've had a collection of stories that I was like, okay, depending on what pick I get to talk about on here. But I will share one of the funnier ones, because I'm a big Candyman fan, as you guys know. And I remember, so it was like, because included with my uncle kind of shepherding me through things, I had my older brother and cousin. They were both 6 years older than me. Okay. So that's a tough age gap, like they're very much older than me. And they were the ones that are like, you can hang with us, but if you hang with us, we're not going to treat you like a little kid, like if you're going to hang, you better hang.
I was that older brother. My brother is 8 years younger than me. And so I know that mindset. It's
a tough gap. Like that's a very awkward age gap, but my younger siblings were, younger. So I was like, well, if I get the choice, then I'm going to try and ride with the big boys, which, they tortured me and scared the shit out of me at any chances they could get. After watching Cube, I used to be a very heavy sleeper. So we watched Cube and I was terrified of like waking up in some sort of like, trap or situation. So they took me we watched at my grandparents' place, and he had a church off to the side that he preached at. And so like we watched Cube, I'm terrified. I go to sleep. And because I'm such a heavy sleeper, they were able to take me from the house and they carried me to the kitchen, like in the church, and like carried me, and then like had like all the lights off and stuff. And then so just like the shock of me waking up in like a different area that I like fell asleep. Terrified me. I was so scared.
That's so mean.
Like, and again, testament to how heavy of a sleeper I was.
Jesus.
I wish I was still that heavy of a sleeper. That was
too. Good Lord.
Yeah, so I definitely had one of those, but the story that takes the cake for sure is we watched Candyman, and but previous to watching Candyman, my brother hyped it up with the legend. He's like, "Here, we're gonna go in the bathroom and we're gonna do the thing." And this was before he even showed me the movie. So like he's already scaring the shit out of me. So like going into the movie, I'm terrified.
Right.
And we watched the movie in my uncle's basement. It's blacked out where it's all dark. And like, I mean, we watch it, they're jump scaring me throughout the movie. And then it was a very large basement, so we would like play games and stuff. It was like, somewhat finished, but like we were able to like roller skate down there and like do all sorts of dumb shit.
Hell yeah.
And so we're running around, and they're like, all right, let's play tag in the dark, or whatever. And there were like 5 of us down there, like my cousin, brother, and my uncle's friend, and we're playing. And we have and when I say the lights are blacked out, like we would like tape over the windows. We put, towels under the door. This was pitch black, like darkness. And that was like half of the game, Mm-hmm. So I'm like, navigating my way through, and I'm like in between like a bunch of boxes. And my uncle can do a like ridiculously good Tony Todd impression. And all he did was like, I'm like fumbling around the dark, and he says my name in like Candyman's voice, like, just rumbles it. And so in this unfinished basement, there's a giant pole in the middle of the room. It's kind of off to the side, so we can avoid it, but and we know that it's there, but me and my fear, like I just turn around wherever I was, I go to take off running. And then boom, I smack my like head on this like pole, knock myself out. I literally pass out for a bit, knock myself out on this pole. And then they like turn on the lights, and like I got like blood coming from my forehead, and they're like checking my nose, make sure nothing's broken. And I remember my uncle being like, don't start crying. I was like, it hurts. And they're like, don't start crying. Like, if your mom hears us, like, we're going to get in so much trouble. And so it was like kind of one of those moments. And oh man, and then it turned into like, I got to choose a better movie to watch. I was like, oh, I won't play no more. I'm scared. So they like let me choose the movies for the rest of the night. And then we played everything with the lights on, whatever video games I wanted. So, they made up for it, but it was. And you
weren't concussed?
I who knows?
Yeah, true. Fair enough. They're like, don't tell mom. Well, you're still here. So
hey, I turned out all right, I think. But yeah, it was. Wow. I had a giant like horn on my forehead for a good like 3 weeks.
Wow,
the good stuff.
Wow,
the good stuff.
Has any movie that you've seen recently freaked you out or kind of given you that feeling of like quasi fear? Because I know like all of us, you're probably jaded a little bit now, like you were saying. But is there a movie recently that you've seen that is like has gotten close to those feelings?
Man, I'm trying to think, because like, I definitely have ones where like I'll be like watching, and I guess the most recent one, and I eventually, had a very emotional reaction to it. I tagged you, Mary Beth, was when I watched We're All Going to the World's Fair.
Yeah.
And like the way that they just use the silence and like the stillness of being on the internet late at night. And like, just like, I remember, no spoilers for the movie, but like in the first half where you're kind of looking out for a lot of these horror things that you think are going to happen throughout the movie. They do just wonderful jobs of like having those scenes where it's just like, pausing on her face, and the multiple scenes that they do that, it like creeped me out. But then like even just that like slight scene where homeboy is watching one of her videos and she's sleeping, and then it like her like face turns over and it like makes that face. It's so subtle, but it scared the shit out of me because it reminded me of a time that I had sleep paralysis. And so like her making that face like scared the like, oh man, it got me good. Like I was watching like at midnight, like, totally vibed out with the blanket over my mouth, and, like classic kid stuff. So like, I still have those moments for sure.
Hell yeah.
It's so good. Oh man, I'm trying to figure out something to write about it, because like it's so good. Ugh.
So tell us a little bit about your podcast.
Yeah.
Yes, you guys have, of course, both been on the podcast, the Specter Cinema Club, which actually, depending on the time that this episode's coming out, might be under a different name. Question mark. I won't reveal it just yet because I don't know when this episode's going out. But yeah, it'll actually be going under some rebranding. But Specter Cinema Club is a podcast where me and my buddy Garrett McDowell, we take a look at different subgenres each month, whether it be a different subgenre or a franchise. and we kind of try to find like, the recurring motifs or themes, of these movies of that subgenre, and like kind of like what makes them work in that subgenre, I suppose. So that's kind of the way that we go about it. We just wrapped up doing some Stephen King adaptations, and then we're gonna be closing out the year with some Reanimator movies and cannibal movies. So we got a fun little lineup, and then Disney Channel originals to close out the year. So we got a fun little slate.
Wow, what a fascinating the range on that one.
The range. I mean, yes, we like to get deep and have some analysis, but we like to have a silly time as well. I am a stoner and, smoke lots of things while watching these movies. So we have a silly goose time,
Silly goofy time talking about horror movies.
So if people wanted to listen and wanted a good episode, if they have not listened before, besides the two that we're on, because you can't try to suck up to us that way. Besides those two, what is a good episode for people to start with?
Yeah, you guys definitely did have some very fantastic episodes. Love both episodes I did with you guys. But if I had to recommend people to start, I would say I would probably go with we covered the Slumber Party Massacre movies in March. And that was, so if you want to hear the way that we dissect like franchises, I think that's a very fun one because it like also bounces around between subgenres within that series. It was new for both of us. And I think that is a good like little series that like kind of encapsulates the energy that me and Garrett kind of bring, but then also, what we try to do in the way that we break stuff down. So I would say that's a pretty good one. And a personal favorite of mine is the Good Manners episode. Good Manners is such a good movie. Lovely werewolf film that I adore. And me and Michael Verratti had a wonderful conversation about it. So that's actually a personal favorite episode of mine.
And the movie, okay, I will plug our episode because we talked about Cure, which is an incredible Japanese horror movie. And it's coming out on Criterion in October. And I pre-ordered it forever ago because Cure is one of my all-time favorite movies. So everyone should go see Cure. But it was a really fun discussion because Cure is so weird. It's so hard to talk about in like the short period of time we had, but it was a really fun conversation because the movie is a mind fuck.
Yeah, that was a good one that we paired with Suicide Club, another great horror as well. Yeah, that was a good one. Shout out to the Skinnamin roll. You guys have to go listen to figure that one out. Disgusting.
I'm grossed. I'm grossed out. I'm grossed out.
I'm grossed.
I am grossed.
Yeah, not even out. Just I am grossed.
I'm just grossed.
Like we should make that a thing. Just say I'm grossed.
I'm grossed.
Yeah.
Like the shorthand. Save yourself some time.
Yeah.
Hey, throw it on TikTok. It'll catch on, I'm sure.
There we go. Sure. Hashtag I'm grossed.
I'm grossed.
God. Seriously. But DeVaughn, what movie did you bring with you today for us to talk about?
Oh, I brought with me the drums, y'all, because we're talking Jumanji.
Oh boy.
Fucking God. Okay. So here's the synopsis for Jumanji. When two kids find and play a magical board game, they release a man trapped in it for decades and a host of dangers that can only be stopped by finishing the game.
And that does cover the plot very incredibly well. But boy, we'll get to this and dig into this, but I was not prepared for how sinister this movie actually is on a rewatch. But take us all back. Maybe that was for you the same. Well, my God, what am I saying? What are even words?
I mean, I think what did it for me was like, I mean, there are just like there's such high stakes in this movie. Like, even though it's like, yeah, like they make it out, reminding you that you're playing a game. But like, I mean, when you see just like by the end of the movie, like the state of the house and the town, and you just see how much they like really went through in this movie, like it's harrowing.
It is.
And something about that, like because I'm big into like the survival subgenre, whether it be the death game kind of style, whether in that vein, or in this case, it like kind of blends like death game, but then also like natural disaster horrors together in a way. And yeah, I don't know, something about it is just like, like knowing, that there is a way out, like, like all they have to do is finish it, but it's like literally there's no rules to the game except for they just have to make it through, they just have to survive. I don't know, is very fascinating. And just like it's just the scope and epicness of this movie is just makes it so fun to watch too. Like, I mean, they gave this thing $65 million and they used every penny of it, to really make this feel just as big and epic and bombastic as it can. And like, every situation, the way that they escalate it just like makes you even more invested. But then like in your mind, you're just like, well, it is a game. So like, I don't know, like, could I make it through this? Like, could I play through Jumanji? Like, like it kind of gives you one of those experiences. And the fact that it's, adults and kids going through this in this movie too, just adds another element of weight to it. So this movie, like I said, like it was, I could show it to my sisters and they were, having a good time with it, but like they were also scared, like, when they're, fighting an alligator in a monsoon, like that shit is scary, like there's a lot of like really horror-esque scenes, but of course, like, but you look at the cover of this thing, and it looks like a whimsical game adventure. Like the cover of it's white, so it makes it feels bright, and it's like, oh yeah, this is fun. And it's like, no, like this is serious.
So you kind of mentioned a little earlier about introducing this to your younger sisters. Can you take us back? When did you see this movie? How old were you? Set the scene for your first watch of this film.
So I'm thinking I had to be maybe 10 or so. So that would make them 7 and 6, the ones that were watching it with me. And then my baby sister wasn't born yet, probably, or she was, but she was a baby. So yeah, so fairly young. And I can't remember if I think we rented it, and then we rented it and really liked it because I think I like recognized Robin Williams on the cover from like a different movie. Oh, it was probably from Hook.
Oh, yeah, that would make sense.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
I think I saw Robin Williams on the cover, and then because I really liked Hook, so we rented it and then liked it so much, we eventually bought it. And then we bought it, and then just like literally, like, we would kind of go in, like, even though we had like a massive collection, there would be like those movies that would just like kind of become like, in the rotation that just would kind of always be on, or would be like the movie that like if we couldn't decide what to watch, then it's like, oh, let's watch Jumanji. And like, it was like one of those ones I was like, never a no to watch it. But yeah, just remember, again, like every time we come back to it, just like it still feels fresh. It still has that like same energy to it every single time. And we just kind of got, sucked into it, like literally.
Do you remember in particular, like scenes or anything that terrified you or your sisters?
Man, so I mean, the movie doesn't play like right out the gate. Like it sets the tone with those opening scenes of Alan.
Horror movie cold open. I swear to fucking God.
It reminded me of the opening to Jurassic Park with the kind of ominous soundtrack behind it, and like the forest setting, and it's like, what is going on here? And it's like a little mysterious. Like it reminded me a bit of Jurassic Park.
Yeah, it kind of has back-to-back like cold opens in a way. Like it has like the mysterious one kind of set up, like the mystery of the game itself and like what they're talking about and the drums. And but then like, yeah, like the first time whenever Alan and Sarah are playing, and just that visual of the way that Alan gets sucked into the game, and he's like his skin's like all flat and he's like winded and he's like screaming. One thing I'll say about every person in this cast, everyone can scream in this movie.
Oh my God. Yes.
Everyone in this movie, but hearing him like just like wailing as he's like getting sucked in, and like he doesn't know what's happening, she doesn't know what's happening, and we don't know what's happening. Like it's just a hell of a way to start off a movie of like, did they just kill a kid in the second scene of the movie? Like what is happening right now? I thought this movie, because I can't remember if this is PG or PG-13, but I feel like it'd be PG-13, but maybe a heavy PG. I'm not sure, but
again, it's PG. It's PG. I just looked.
That's the heavy PG.
That's wild. Yeah. They stretch the PG on this one for sure.
They sure do. It's funny that you bring up that scene though, because there's two things. First, when I tweeted out that I was watching this for podcast prep, Trace Thurman, friend of the show, previous guest, said, "Hoo boy, did I have nightmares for months after watching little Alan Parrish scream/beg for help as he got sucked into that game." And rewatching this adult, I'm like, this is actually kind of horrifying. The way that his like skin is like getting pulled, disintegrated, swirled into like a miasma, and it just gets sucked into the. It's really horrifying.
Yeah, the presentation of it all. I mean, James Horner's score goes so hard across this entire movie, but like there's like this like darkness behind it. Like, so like in that very first scene, like it's like, no, like, hey, like there's some real danger gonna happen in this movie. And then the implications of it too, like that he, eventually gets out, but he spends 26 years in the jungle.
26 years in the jungle.
What? Like, and just like that is terrifying.
And I totally forgot there was like the 1869 or whatever, like beforehand, and like how they're like, and something that happens in this movie, like they establish a lore, but not really a lore, which I think is really interesting. But I watched this movie a ton as a kid. Like this was one of my favorite movies as a kid. And there are a lot of things I remember, but did not remember the like creepy, like horse-drawn carriage burying the game first.
Did not remember that at all.
Not even a little bit.
Yeah, so it's like you feel the danger like literally instantly, and you're just like, what? Oh, like what's their problem? And I love even like the dramatic delivery of like, well, what's gonna happen if somebody digs up? May God have mercy on his soul. Classic, love it.
Yeah. Well, and then like we have like the classic rich kid story, and like his dad owns the shoe factory. Jonathan Hyde, I love Jonathan Hyde.
Fantastic.
And so this poor kid Alan is like a little nerd who gets picked on, and they have this gorgeous giant house. And there's all this talk of like, I don't want to be like a Parrish, and this like interesting discussion about privilege and like not wanting to like continue on this family legacy of like going to the same boys' school and like all of this stuff, which was interesting. It's not touched on anymore, but I was just like thought that was interesting. But then this house is fucking huge, and he finds this game at the factory, and then it gives me haunted, like a little bit of creepy haunted house vibes, because like they play. So Sarah, his little crush, comes over. They start playing the game, and when she rolls, there's like bats coming, like sounds of bats in the chimney, and then Alan gets sucked right into the fucking game, and then the bats come out. I'm like, this is such a fucking horror movie. They chase her out of the house, and the door slams on its own. Like it's such a scary movie.
Oh yeah, and I wrote down the haunted house vibes too. Whenever like as far as like whenever that we get introduced to Aunt Nora, and like you're seeing like the remains of this house, and now it has legends behind it on like what actually happened to Alan. So it's like and this is a New England set movie, so it's like kind of has that like they say it's chilly. So I mean, this feels like a fall spooky season. Like it sets up like. That it kind of has a folklore vibe to it of like, oh yeah, like everyone in the neighborhood knows, or has a different story of what happened to Alan, and like nobody wants to go near this giant house anymore. So like totally see that.
The fact that the urban legend has sprouted in this town that his father chopped him up and put him in the walls, because that's brought up a couple times in this movie, is gnarly for a PG movie. The fact that is what the town thinks happened. Father went crazy, chopped the kid up, buried him in the house somewhere.
Yeah.
What?
It's like there's a lot of mature things like throughout this movie, again, like for it being PG, like like one of the main themes being facing your past traumas, with the adult characters and like their PTSD that they have, and like I mean like this movie's so mature.
It's so to touch on that. So like there's a couple things here. This giant house, the Parrish house, is abandoned, and this woman with her niece and nephew, whose parents have died in a car crash, are moving to this town.
Ski accident, right?
Yes.
Was it a car?
It was a car accident in Canada.
Yeah, on the way to skiing or something, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so she moves into this small town in New Hampshire and is like, we're gonna make an Airbnb. And then so before I go into the kids with their dead parents, gentrification is a theme in this fucking movie because she's coming in to make an Airbnb, and then you see this entire town is like, there's a porn store, people look like they're unhoused,
Sir saves a lot.
Yeah, there's like trash everywhere. The Parrish statue has been completely like vandalized. The factory is run down. And I never got that before as a kid of like, this town is fucking falling apart. And then this woman is like, I feel like that like beginning force of like, we're going to make it better and a tourist attraction. And I thought that, again, it doesn't dive into that a ton, but it has these like sprinkles of it that are pretty obvious as an adult watching it. Like, oh, this is a dying small town. And she's trying to like breathe life back into it, but also like because that shoe factory closed and because Alan disappeared, basically everything fell apart, and then the town no longer had jobs. And I was like, Jesus Christ, like in the 90s especially, like a lot of that, I mean, like that was happening a lot with like a lot of factories closing down. So it was like, oh.
Well, and I like that they parallel it too, because it's like you said, like this whole town basically fell apart because Alan disappeared. And then like later on when they're playing the game, like one thing, because I haven't watched this in a few years, and one thing I kind of forgot about is like how much they actually involve like the town in this too. So it's like, so it's like the town has already suffered from the game. And then once the game starts up again, it literally goes into like almost a near apocalypse mode. Like people are looting and raiding and like it's bananas.
Yeah.
The end of days feel of this movie towards the end, as everyone is literally like raiding the store, was surprising to me. Because I saw this movie. I know I saw it in the movie theater, so that would have been 95. I would have been 14. And I don't really remember much about this movie from a kid. I remember being entertained. Because I loved Robin Williams. I remember thinking he was great in it. But like, I had no memories at all about this movie. So sitting down to watch this as an adult was like, this is not anything that I remember.
It's kind of like in that like little gray area that like Small Soldiers came out around the same time too, and also has a similar vibe, but that was from Joe Dante, so it's like we knew what to expect there. But like with this,
Small Soldiers was Joe Dante?
Yeah.
I don't think I knew that.
Yeah, so that all makes kind of sense. But then like, but this is like, so much more like mature than you think it is. And like, and I kind of remember like, like watching it young, it like kind of felt, which is ironic for the series. When I was young, it felt like watching a video game. It was like, as each turn goes on, like, and they deal with each different challenge, feels like different levels of a video game. I think that probably was like what made it so fun to watch when you're younger. But then like watching it in this one, I felt like tired for all the characters, because I was like, they are going through like a lot of shit in one day, mind you.
One day.
So I mean, like it feels like this like long, harrowing like odyssey that they're going through, and like it plays just very differently.
Yeah. And like, so I don't remember how old I was when I saw this movie, because it came out in 95. I was born in 93. So I saw it on VHS after it had been out. And I loved this movie mostly because I loved animals. So there was a lot of animals in this movie. And I was like, oh, cool. Like I was like, oh, cool. It's going to be like animals and jungle animals. It's going to be so good. The two parts that scared me the most were the fucking mosquitoes. The giant mosquitoes, and they're in the car and they start poking through the top of the car and then break the window. And I was like, absolutely, like that was horrifying, that the size of the bug, and just like, I mean, it's a horror movie of them, like something attacking the top.
But let's not forget though that right before that scene, a lady crashes into an ambulance because she got bit by one of these mosquitoes, and she is like going to anaphylactic shock or something. Her body is like shaking as she's being let out. Like, what?
In the background, they keep updating you on this too, because when that crash happens, they go, oh, this is like the 50th one today. So it's already gotten that number. And then like later on the radio, they like say something about like it being like a pandemic. They're like, oh my gosh, all these people getting bit by this thing and like reporting about it. So it's like, it really is like seeps into this town like rather quickly.
Well, and so I wrote this down. It's like, this feels like The Mist for children. It made me think about The Mist.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because the Mist, a portal opens. And in Jumanji, a portal is opened and the town is fucking ransacked by creatures and things coming out of the portal. And that's happening here. The town is getting destroyed. The bugs are like there's the other weird buggy creatures in the mist. There's the bugs hurting people. I mean, the town is getting absolutely destroyed by these things that came out of the portal. And it just made me think of like Miss Light, with obviously a way less fucked up ending, but it just has.
Can you imagine? Can you imagine if this movie had like a Mrs. Carmody, Marcia Gay Harden's character, like the preacher?
Well, they almost do though, because
Van Pleet, that fucking hunter, is kind of like Miss Carmody coming out and trying to blast everyone to death. Well,
they almost have a super dark ending whenever Judy and Peter and their parents show up to the party at the very end and everything has been fixed. And then the parents are like, oh yeah, next week we're actually going to go skiing in Colorado. And they both go, no. And like the party stops for a minute.
I laughed.
So he literally saved them from becoming orphans. Like,
we'll get to that because that shit's fucking nuts. That part's only fucking nuts. The other part that fucked me up as a kid was the plant. The plants. Between this and like the Harry Potter Devil's Snare from the first one, yeah, I was a Harry Potter kid. J.K. Rowling sucks shit now, et cetera, et cetera. But like something about giant plants fucks with my head. And I think it's because of this movie, because the vines come down, like, oh, it's so pretty. And then the goddamn giant flower, which is like this incredible practical thing, it opens up in the cabinet and tries to suck the kid in. And it's just, and then that paired with the purple ones that shoot the poison darts out.
And just like the vine like takes the car later also. Like, yeah, the vines scared the shit out of me too. That giant thing that like comes out. It's gorgeous looking. Like, I mean, so much of the practical effects that they do in this are just phenomenal. Like, I mean, again, they really used up all those resources. But like the scene where we get introduced to that big pod, it like takes Peter and drags him under the carpet. For some reason, that always like scared me as a kid, even though I was like, that would never happen to me. But like, what if it did? Like, that was like terrifying.
See, all I kept thinking about was like, it's Audrey too from Little Shop of Horrors. That's all I kept thinking about as a kid, because like I loved that movie as growing up, and so like seeing this is like, oh, it's Audrey too. Yeah, no, I mean, it's like, again, like the way that they just like kind of keep escalating as it goes. Gets like, we go from literally like plant attacks to stampede, and then the stampede, like, you know, really like kind of escalates the tension of everything going on, because now it's just like all the animals are kind of going everywhere, and just the mixture of the threats that kind of keep coming out like really keep this movie like very fresh. And I very much appreciate that we like get the natural disaster villains, but then also like Van Pelt that like comes out as well, which genius casting him as the dad and Van Pelt was such a genius idea.
I want to touch on the practical effects, because they burned through their budget, because there is some shitty CGI in this movie too, which is so confusing, because they have these moments of really cool practical effects and shit, and then you have the monkeys that are just...
Girl, when the monkeys like show up in the kitchen and they're making a mess and we get like a close-up on their face, I was like, oh, it reminded me of like that. What's that? There's like a GIF that people use for a reaction of like some monkey that's like side-eyeing the camera.
Oh yeah. No, the CGI can be definitely spotty. I like when they like, because it's not as bad when they integrate it, because with the lion they have a practical lion, and then when it would do like the fast movements it was CGI, but they would keep cutting back and forth between the practical one, so it made the CGI like not as bad, versus like the CGI monkeys are just straight CGI. So
they look so low res when I was watching it last night. It was like when it focused on the face, I was like, this looks so incredibly low res. When they're, especially, I think the moment that like really jumped out was when they're in the cop car and there's like the camera
my
like
favorite
zooms in
scene
on
of the whole movie.
It's a great scene, but it focuses on their scene on the face, and the low res look on that face. I was like, oh, you lost your budget on the production design of this film.
You know, I don't even know, because like I also feel like the amount of times that they show the monkey and the stampede stuff, it's like I feel like they were like excited about it. Because I feel like in '95, like, you know, this is like kind of stuff. So it's like I honestly feel like they were like proud of the monkeys, and that's why they keep showing them, because like the monkeys that show up like a lot throughout the movie.
They do, but then like 2 years earlier, we had Jurassic Park that blew it out of the way with the CG. Like, it's, I don't know, it just
can't all be Jurassic Park, Terry.
Listen, ironically though, director would go on to do Jurassic Park 3, which
yes, hilarious. But the monkey scene in the cop car is my fucking favorite, when they like shoot off the gun and take the car. It's like obviously the comedic relief, but it always made me laugh as a kid, and I was waiting for that moment, because that's one of the ones I remembered was the fucking monkey shooting the gun and stealing the car. And that poor cop just being fucking fucked with the whole movie, just trying to get his car back.
Man. Shout out David Alan Grier.
David Alan Grier.
So
he is so fun throughout. Like, I mean, you know, even him, Aunt Nora, like you know, like all the side characters are great, but like the cast of this is like just impeccable overall. Like,
absolutely stacked.
Everybody works together so well, like within each other, and I love it.
A cameo by Patricia Clarkson as the mom.
I know.
In like a single scene. Like,
so cool. I mean, a young Kirsten Dunst as
so
Judy, little baby.
And this would have been after Interview with the Vampire came out too. So she's already like, she's been flexing already a little bit, and you know, she
still keeps fucking winning. Goddamn good for her.
Oh yeah, her little thing where she's fucking with the real estate agent cracks me up. And it's just like, oh, like look at this kid.
Oh yes,
about their dead parents, but like also like, you know, she plays that you know, mature for her age like role so well when she was younger.
Well, okay, let's talk about dead parents, because this movie is the most. I had no fucking idea. Remembered at all, like these intense mediations on grief and your past and like father trauma, because obviously you have the kids with their parents who died, and one of the kids, the boy Peter, won't talk to anyone after his parents have died, and they, you know, he talks to his sister, but they're kind of trying to figure out their new life. Alan comes back after 26 years and has to grieve his fucking parents because he doesn't know they're dead. And he goes to their headstone and he's like, oh my God, like the last conversation I had with my dad. Oh my God, they're dead. Like, I can't believe it. But then you have Sarah, who this was my favorite and totally forgot. Sarah, who saw him disappear 26 years ago, is now a hermit and a psychic or a medium who has changed her name and is now declared over 2,000 hours of therapy to like deal with the trauma of seeing him sucked into the game and convincing herself it didn't happen. And no one will talk to her. Everyone thinks that she's a weirdo. And so like she's dealing with literally 26 years of trying to cope with this trauma. You see her call her therapist when Alan she's up at the door, and she's like,
that event that didn't happen.
He's at my door, and it's just like this poor woman is trying so hard to be trying to live a relatively normal life, and he just shows up at her door and just undoes it, and she's like trying so hard to cope with it throughout this entire movie while being shoved back into the trauma of her being a child, and it's just like, holy shit.
There's just like so many like deep implications, like is of like the things that we didn't even see, like, you know, like just in like just this giant time shift, like, you know, she's like had to deal with like this, like, you know, like kind of identity crisis because people think that she's crazy, and like, you know, like, so it's like the way that it's like had a hold on her, and then and again, like the fact that when you think like Alan spent 26 years,
26
in the
years.
jungle,
being hunted by someone that looks like his father.
being hunted. Like, what? I mean, it is insane. And like the work that they do with like him being hunted by his father, but then him trying to get through this situation and face his fears, but then the way that he's treating Peter and becoming his dad, it's like, what?
Break the cycle. Break the cycle.
Like, who wrote in all these layers? Like, but then you like have the movie moments of like, yeah, poor Sarah, like she, is flooded back with all this, and then like 30 minutes later she's playing the game already. So it's like, poor her, like that she's literally just thrust straight into it with like can't do anything about it.
Yeah, it just really did strike me how much more complex this movie was, and I never really picked up on it much as a kid. And watching, I mean, I haven't watched this for years, and rewatching it, I'm like, this movie's really fucking sad. Like, oh my God, everyone is traumatized and people have died and everyone just needs a hug and a therapy.
2,000 hours of it, if you got 2,000 hours to spare. And I think that's where, why this is like why I can unquestionably say this is a horror movie, aside from the visceral, the big set pieces and the natural disaster elements. I mean, we got creature feature stuff with all the animals, like you got all that. But then like, I mean, at the heart of this movie, it's all about, the way that we interact with fear. There's the movie does an interesting like balance act going back and forth between, saying like, okay, you need to face your fears and you need to be strong and chin up. But then also these times where you need to admit that you're scared to be able to get past that fear. Like, so they go back and forth of like, you need to be able to face your fears, but like, it's also okay to acknowledge that you are scared and to have these fears. So the fact that they're doing like a two-hander with the fear is like very fascinating to me.
This movie is so good. My mind is blown about this movie. Like, Jesus.
It's insane.
It does do one trope that I wish we would not see in film anymore, though. And that is, I'm just going to say it. His dad is abusive.
Oh, yeah.
His dad is abusive. And this whole beginning start point where he like is telling his son, you need to man up, right? And then after he gets beaten up, he gets his lip split, he gets a blackened eye, he's home. And his father is now handing him a pamphlet to this boarding school. And what does he say? You don't want me living here anymore? Like that is the takeaway for poor Alan, is that you are trying to send me off because I am, in his mind, not man enough, is like the implication here. And they have this like, this fight, yada, yada, yada. He vanishes. He starts getting hunted by a man that looks like his father. But by the end of the movie, it's all taken away because Alan takes the blame. And that kind of bothers me, that when he finally gets back and he is back as a kid and he like rushes out to give his father a hug. And it's almost as if like you did this bad thing by getting this guy fired, which I get is a bad thing. But it's like all of a sudden I'm the one that put the shoe on the belt. And it's almost like, oh, you're manning up now. And I'm like, no, your dad is a fucking asshole. And this isn't going to change anything. You might feel okay in this moment because you've been away for 26 years. But like, this abuse is going to continue. And so the fact that it sort of glosses over that aspect of it kind of bothered me on this watch. I'm going to be honest, which is a trend, I think, in a lot of kids stuff, where like there's, I don't know, it just sort of glosses over things that looking back on as an adult is like,
it's like abuse. It seems like abuse light, which is not, there's no light form of abuse, but like I feel like they do that in these movies. Like, oh, well, like, he's not like totally screaming at the kid all the time. They got into a fight. He's not hitting the kid. So it's like, oh, no, well, it's just the way dads are. And I'm like, yeah, right. The way dads are supposed to be.
I'm not going to defend him because he definitely is a shitty dad. I mean, like the way that he like snaps on him is so childlike when he's like, well then whatever, then you won't be a Parrish. Blah, blah, blah. Like, I mean, it was like very immature. However, the way that I kind of see it, because I had a similar relationship with my dad when I was younger. No, my dad did not abuse me. My dad's great, but they kind of have this relationship of like not knowing how to communicate between one another. Like the dad, he's trying to instill a lesson or ideas within Alan, about there's a moment where you got to stand up for yourself, but then at the same time, like you got to be able to have empathy for someone that is scared like that, but the dad doesn't have that. That's, kind of what he's missing. And, and you can tell just in the little conversation where you hear like at the school, they have a dormitory named after their grandfather and like all this stuff. So they're old money. Like, so this is, again, like it has been a cycle. His dad probably, was even harder on him on the way that he, was like kind of being tough, because he says like, he doesn't give him the pamphlet until after this like moment, because he said like, oh, well, now, you took him on, so now you are man enough. There almost seems to be like some sort of rite of passage between their family or something. But what I'm trying to get is like there seems to be this just not being able to reason with him. Like his dad is, trying to break the cycle of the way that his dad raised him, and you can tell that like, obviously like, Alan has a nice life. So he's not, aside from that, but also like at the end of the movie, or there's at the midpoint where Alan goes back to the factory and he meets the unhomed man, and he like asks, what happened to the factory. And there's a nice moment, where we, because I think if his father was abusive, we would have gotten a different moment here. But here the man tells him like, oh, well, the factory went under because your dad was put all of his time and money into looking for you. Or, well, not for
I know,
you,
but that really frustrated me.
Yeah.
It really frustrated me because I was like, where was this when your kid was there?
Because he didn't know how.
Okay, I agree. But by the end of the movie, the father doesn't know any of this has happened. It's back to like normal. So what's going to change? And that the movie sort of glosses over that.
Well, the movie, just by its logic of like, everything is undone pretty much, like none of that happened. So it's like, yeah, at the end of the movie, like we don't really get that. But like, to again, like kind of connect it back to like my dad, like he, went the longest time not being able to like communicate certain things to me properly, or my siblings. And it took my dad like getting into this bad work accident. He is permanently disabled. He had like a rough like couple of years of like really like forcing himself to introspect because he like couldn't work. So it's like, so I didn't get sucked into Jumanji, but my dad pretty much did. And like, yeah. And like that, after that, that's like when me and my dad were able to like, he was able to like talk about his feelings. We like started saying like me and my dad used to be like the ones, like we didn't say I love you on the phone over and up until, even though we knew we loved each other, but like we didn't. It was like after that, experience for him, he eventually was able to start figuring out the ways to communicate properly, because he, was able to kind of introspect that. But of course, Alan's dad doesn't actually get that. He does get a total cop out of,
well, and I do
actually
think
happening.
Kind of what you're saying. Like, I do think like our family situations like color things, because like, I'm not going to get into it, but like my dad and I have had like I don't know. I see a lot of my dad in Parrish, and I did not get this kind of change moment, if that makes sense. And so like, there's still this emotional barrier there. And there's a lot of internalized trauma from a lot of stuff that happened. So I guess when I see that, it just sort of like, it's a sticks in my craw kind of point. You know what I mean? Like, just because I don't know. I don't see him having anything that would have changed. I don't think he's going to treat him any different, but the movie seems to think that he is. And
well, because in the movie he didn't do any work. Alan did all the work.
Alan did all the work, and I think that's the problem for me, is that it's like, okay, yeah, he apologized to his dad for doing this thing. He's the one that culps the blame, but then we just don't really get that from the father perspective, because of course he's not part of the story, and so I don't know. It still sits with me poorly the way it's handled.
I mean, it's frustrating, and maybe it could also be like some of the generation stuff that they're going into it that, especially with our generation, like, the millennials are kind of, in grand scheme of things, kind of paying for a lot of the things that, from the previous generations. And, and that's kind of something that's never changing, unfortunately. And that's kind of crazy that this movie was, almost 30 years old.
Yeah.
And still things haven't changed to that degree, but like like Alan is the one that literally goes through all the hell of it, and like he doesn't deserve any of it. Like, he is kind of set up at the beginning of like, yeah, he has this privilege, but like he's also like, it's privilege he didn't like really ask for, and it's privilege he's not really getting anything out of. Yeah, well, I mean, he is getting stuff out, but as far as like, you know, the things that he's dealing with. So it's like he is the one, like, again, like has to go through all these harrowing experiences. And at the end of the day, it doesn't, you know, matter because it technically didn't happen, but it did. It is frustrating seeing that it's like, oh, well, I did the things that I was supposed to do. And now the dad is kind of getting off with a pass because of it. And like, that is very frustrating.
Yeah.
Also,
oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to talk about the ending in general, so I don't want to change the subject if you don't.
Nope, that's where I was going to go. I was thinking about how horrifying it would be to be a kid with the knowledge of 26 years.
I mean, but also just like, I just started thinking about it, I'm like, so it's like a butterfly effect, you know what I mean? Like, so it's just interesting. It's like, if you think about it a little too hard, the game killed their parents. It didn't actually kill their parents, but like kinda. It's like this weird fucking thing. But yeah, so it's like the game took over reality in a way for these kids. Basically, they finish the game finally. They wake up and it's like, oh shit, like we're still here. But also like we have 26 years of very specific trauma on our shoulders, plus these two kids that we trauma bonded with just don't exist. So you're just going to have to sit there and I guess wait for them to be born and hire their dad at the factory.
Oh my God.
What kind of psychotic, weird ass shit is like, I just like, on the surface, like, oh wow. But then like, if you start thinking about it too hard, you're like, wait a second, what?
And I love that. I haven't seen the third one, but I have seen the second movie after this. And they do kind of double down on it still, too, because at the end of that, all the people still have their memories. And like the person that was trapped in the game, like named his kid after one of the players who he's not going to meet until like 20 years down the line. So it's like they stick to it, too. This like weird reality warping. It's the fact that they won the game and then got the opportunity. So they were like, OK, we got to hire their parents, but we got to make sure they don't go skiing. And we also got to make sure they have kids. Like, what?
It's wild. Okay, so you did bring up the sequel. I have seen the sequel, not the third one, but the second one. I don't remember much about it whatsoever. I was looking at the Wikipedia synopsis and I was like, oh, it does continue on the story because I guess Alan Parrish they find his treehouse in the game and stuff. But I don't remember that movie being as sinister as this one is. No, it was more like blockbuster superhero type kind of.
Where was the second one?
It's Welcome to the
Jungle.
Oh, the 2017 one. Okay.
Yeah,
that's the one with like The Rock and Jack Black and shit, right?
Okay. I do appreciate that they even still picked up off the post-credit scene from this movie, because the post-credit scene from this movie is the beach or the game washes up on a beach and it's people speaking French. And then at the beginning of Welcome to the Jungle, it picks up on the beach again.
Oh, does it really?
So it stuck to the 20-year post-credit scene. Love that.
Oh, cool. I didn't know that. I was going to ask what those movies were like. Because I've actually heard the first one isn't bad.
Yeah, I've seen
it's fun.
I saw that one. It was fun. I liked it. The only tribute they do is that one of the other characters that like got stuck in the game stayed in the treehouse that Alan apparently built while he was there. And like there's like something initialed with it and something
Van
like that.
Pelt is in it too, the character.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Funny.
Played by Bobby.
Canvo.
Yeah.
And did you guys ever see Zathura?
Yes. I have seen Zathura. Also,
Zathura is like space Jumanji, Terry. So it's like two kids. They find this game. I think it's from the people who made Jumanji. Like it's Jon Favreau directed it. And Josh Hutcherson as a baby is in it, and so is Dax Shepard and Kristen Stewart.
Josh Hutcherson.
I mean, on the Wikipedia page, it's under the sequel category. It says it claims it's under the same continuity, so it's like a spiritual sequel.
That's what I thought, but it's.
So I think it was written by the same. I think because like Jumanji is based on a children's book.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I think he also wrote. What is it? Zathura?
Zathura.
Yeah. I think he also wrote that.
Yeah.
Yes, he did. You are correct.
The house
Chris Van Allsburg.
The house goes to space, and they have to do like it's space. It's Jumanji in space.
Okay, baby Kristen Stewart.
And Dak Shepard plays the astronaut. The astronaut that helps them is Dak Shepard. So it's like that Alan substitute. It's pretty good. I liked it. I saw it in theater.
That one's good too. It has like, and that one has like some like mature themes in it too about like sibling relationships.
Yeah.
That one.
Oh, Derek Mears is in it too.
Yeah, there's a lot of good people in it. So
Frank Oz was the voice of a robot.
Mm-hmm.
Huh.
Yeah.
So Jumanji in space, it's out there for you.
It's out there.
I wish we got more like kind of more like that. Like instead of them kind of picking up with Jumanji again, like if they could just kept doing like these like spiritual ones, like, you know, we got one in space, we got jungle, now we need an Arctic one.
That'd be for
Jumanji in the snow.
There's actually a really cool horror comedy that just came out a couple months ago called Gatlop, which is like adult Jumanji, and it's like they're all confronting like the past and how they become like estranged as friends, and like it's like a board game from hell, and they get transported and like have it's yeah, so it's like Jumanji for adults. So
now they made a board game on this movie, didn't they?
Yeah, that. People I knew had it, and every time I saw it, I wouldn't go fucking near it because I was like, I was so scared. It was like my Ouija board. I was like, if I fuck with that, I'm getting sucked into it. Like whenever someone had it in their house, I would steer clear. It freaked me out.
So I did have one at one point. I don't know what happened to it. It's very depressing because I had because they actually made them, because now they just come in like the regular game boards or whatever. But they like before they actually made it with like the wooden like case and everything.
Really?
Yeah.
It looked cool as shit, but that's why I was so scared of it, because it looked like the game. Like it was like the open box. Like it looked like the game.
But it's disappointing though. The middle part is just like they did it like it's like Magic 8-Ball style is how they do like the like words in the middle. It's like in like a liquid and like it like moves. Wow. Yeah, good stuff.
So do we want to wrap this up and give it a rating out of 5?
First, we need to talk about Robin Williams.
We do have to talk about Robin Williams.
Talking about Robin Williams.
The lion in the room.
This was the first movie I think I've seen with him in it since his passing. I don't think I've seen anything that he was in since then, and that was like, it was heartbreaking. What a force of a man.
I mean, and this is like a very classic like Williams performance too. Like this is him like giving you like all of his things. Like he gives you some drama in here. He's got the physicality. Like he's got the jokes. Like he's got the faces even. Like I mean,
my favorite part is when he's like sniffing out the kids and he opens up the closet and sees them and he goes and just closes the closet door. It's such a small moment, but that moment like just had me laughing. But you're right. This like does encompass a lot of what he brings to the table of the dramatic, the childlike nature that he kind of imbues characters, the humor, the faces. Like this is a quintessential role for him, and it's not as much over the top as some of his other performances.
No, it's like it's kind of like the perfectly calibrated. Like I know for some people, Williams can be a little bit too much. Like, I mean, I love everything he does, but I totally, but like this is like the perfect, like dialed in of like, just like the ridiculous scene of him like hanging in from the ceiling and he's like, no, put the dice in your mouth too. He's like making like dumb faces. I'm just like, even in this like, perilous moment, we're still getting like Williamisms in there. And I mean, in the fact that you got to remember, he's playing a 13, 14-year-old boy who's been in a jungle. So he hasn't been, acclimated. So it's like, he still, doesn't know things. So it's like the performance he's giving is like he's doing it.
And I don't want to make you sad, Mary Beth, but I know you have like a special attachment to this actor, this man.
Yeah. I'm not looking at the screen because I'm getting emotional.
I'm sorry.
It's important to talk about him because he was the first, like, him and Anthony Bourdain were the only 2 celebrity deaths that have like fucked me up. When I found out Robin Williams died, I sobbed for hours. and I don't think I understood how much he meant to me as a kid. I mean, like I grew up watching all of his movies, and one of my favorite movies of his is Patch Adams, where he plays the doctor, and like that, like he's just like so incredibly empathetic in that movie, and then like just everything about Robin Williams just like was so warm to me, and he always felt like, even when he was in fucked up, like I haven't seen a ton of his like more dramatic work, but like when he's in fucked up movies like Dad of the Year or Best Dad, like the one where his kid dies from like asphyxiating when he's jerking off, and it's like it's a fucking crazy movie. But
I don't think I've seen this one.
Yeah, that's World's Best Dad. Yeah,
World's Best Dad. Yeah. It's fucked up, but it's really funny. But it was just like, he was like a constant in my weird life as a kid, and he always made me smile, and he always made me laugh. And I was also going through a tough time, like with my mental health, because it was right around when I was like going to graduate college and all this stuff. And so like we found out why he completed, I believe he completed suicide, and like kind of why that happened. But at the time we didn't know that he had that form of dementia, correct? Is like why he ended up completing suicide. And I was like, well, if he can't fucking stand living in this world, how can I? Like, it was like so dark and so fucked, but like, because I was going through like a really dark time of like suicidal ideation, like it fucking cut me to pieces. So I haven't watched one of his movies in a long time, but I still got taken back to like the warmth and how much I loved him. Like I wasn't as sad as I thought I was going to be, because it like just took me back to like the comfort I found in his movies and him as like his voice of like, the genie in Aladdin.
Yeah.
Oh, he was just Hook. He's just.
And I remember seeing him in Mork and Mindy.
Mork and Mindy, yes.
Yeah, that's like before I even knew who he was, I would catch, I believe, reruns of that show on television. And to go from that and then to see him as Hook or in Hook as Peter Pan, and just like, I don't know, all of the stuff. He just was such a warm person on the screen. Like most of the time. And then there was like once in a while where he wasn't, like for instance 1 Hour Photo.
Yes
Like he's had some dark performances, but like I don't know, he just same with me, Mary Beth. He was just like, he was sort of like always there in my childhood.
Oh god, he was in fucking The Bicentennial Man. That movie fucked my shit.
I've not seen it.
It is sad. It is a sad movie, but yeah, I mean, and I think, this is also like, a great, movie to watch to like kind of, think about, because like, when you think about everything that he went through and, the way that it turned out versus, when you watch the different versions of, him in these movies, you get to, reminded, and it's like, in this one, like this is like, his like the perseverance, his character like had to endure so much. And so it's like, it's almost nice getting to watch this and being like, no, like, see, he persevered and he made it through. And like, I mean, he went through like all that stuff and like came out. It's kind of nice to watch in that way.
Yeah. Oh, we love you, Robin Williams. You're great. And we miss you.
Yeah.
Yes, we do.
Anyway, I forgot he was in Flubber. Oh, I love Flubber. Anyway,
Mrs. Doubtfire. The Birdcage.
The Birdcage. Oh, okay. Before I start crying, let's give this a rating out of 5. Jesus Christ. Terry, how many bad CGI monkeys out of 5 do you give Jumanji?
There's going to be 4 bad CGI monkeys in my version of this movie. It was weird watching this as an adult because, like I said, I had no recollection of pretty much anything of this movie. I vaguely remembered the monkeys shooting the shotgun in the car, but like this was like watching it for the first time, to the point that like when we get to the end and it's like back in time, I'm like, what? Like it just I forgot all about this movie, and I honestly do not know why, but it was like a breath of fresh air. There's a lot to this movie that I absolutely loved, and there's a lot to it that it was a lot more sinister than I remembered as a kid. It's a quintessential kid movie in that regard, where it's like there's danger to it and it doesn't treat kids with like safety gloves, and there's danger and there's excitement and there's humor. I don't know, this movie is a lot of fun. So for me, it is 4 bad CGI monkeys. What about you, Mary Beth?
So I'm gonna give a 4.5, because that half is fueled by nostalgia and obsession with this movie. But the other 4 come from a lot of what you're saying, Terry. But like, I just have a deeper appreciation for all of the levels this movie is working on, and how it's not just a funny movie about a silly board game, but like people trying to grieve and parse their trauma and like face their fears and really like kind of confront the things that scare them in a way that is like, it seems like a more external threat, and it's scary as shit, but it's a better way to, really understand your emotions. And I think it's just so fucking fun. Robin Williams is incredible. Everyone in this movie is so good. And it's just like a stacked 90s cast. And
Bonnie Hunt, we didn't even talk about Bonnie Hunt as Sarah. So good.
So good.
So everything about this movie is like speaks to my childhood and like things that I liked as a kid. And it's just as good as it was when I watched it as a kid. I'm so glad it's just as fun. And I have an even deeper appreciation for it now. So DeVaughn, you have the final word. How many bad CGI monkeys out of 5 do you give Jumanji?
I mean, bad CGI aside, I mean, this is a 5 out of 5 for me.
Hell yeah.
Says it, I think it does everything that it should do as a film. Like all the things that it's juggling and trying to, juggling these subgenres, these mature themes, keeping a tone that keeps it fun, but like you said, like still has the air of danger to it. Like it's just doing a lot, and like for all the things that it's doing, it pulls it off. And then like, I can kind of cover up some of the mistakes for it, just the scope of this movie. Like, I mean, there's so many set pieces that we didn't even get to talk to because there's just so many things. I mean, the grocery store scene is like super fun. I mean, the monsoon at the end, like, I mean, because like I love
crocodiles.
The crocodile. I mean, I love.
Oh, and the surprise spiders, by the way.
Oh spiders? No, I know. I was like,
it didn't bother me because they didn't look real, but like,
yeah,
are you fucking kidding me? We have surprise spiders in this
everything. Everything. I mean, I'm surprised there wasn't a giant snake in here. We didn't get the giant snake quota. But I mean, I love when they take like a large elaborate set and just destroy it. I mean, they took all the money. I mean, the house porn that we get in this. I mean, they literally play the game in every like room of this house. Like they
make use of that house.
They're moving you around. I like how we like are in the house for a while, leave the house, and then we come back to the house, and it's like in a completely different state, covered in the vines, and it's now wet, and just like the movie is doing so much. Robin Williams again, like at the top of his game. There's just a funness to this that like for some reason does not go away. Like it's like you get to have all the fun and then like calm at the end. It makes you want to rewatch it because then you're like, okay, like now it doesn't feel like so harrowing. I don't know, just everything works about this movie. The set design, the James Horner score is just iconic. I love it. Like there's no notes from me.
James Horner is an iconic composer. And he was like top of his game in the 90s. Like great movies.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining us and making me rewatch Jumanji for the first time in math is hard. However many years it's been since 1995. But where can our listeners find you, and what do you have that you can plug or talk about?
Thank you so much for having me. I know I've been wanting to come on for a lot. Now we have all slept at each other's houses, podcast-wise. I love the show. You guys are fantastic. And I'm glad I got to come on to this and, put a horror spin on a maybe not as conventional pick. But, that's kind of what I'm known for.
Hell yeah.
Find me on Twitter and Instagram at _daddydisco. I direct music videos. I do photography. Sometimes I make music. Sometimes I roller skate. So, you can find me doing those things there, but you can find the Bloody Blunt Cinema Club anywhere that you find podcasts at Bloody Blunts Pod on Twitter and Instagram. But make sure you go follow us because the name and look will be changing a little bit, but the show will be exactly the same. Me and my buddy Garrett breaking down subgenres and franchises within the genre world. So yeah, come hang out with us.
Hell yeah. So listeners, you've heard from us, but we want to hear from you. What was your experience with Jumanji? Send us an email at scarredforlifepodcast@gmail.com, or you can reach out to us directly on Twitter. I am at MB McAndrews.
And I'm a Gaily Dreadful.
And of course, don't forget to follow the podcast on Twitter at Scarred Podcast.
And please don't forget to review, rate, and subscribe.
And
sign up for a Patreon.
Yeah, become a patron on our Patreon, maybe. Thank you. Thank you to Eric Power for our artwork. Thank you to Sean Keller for our music. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Please stay safe out there. But most importantly, stay creepy.
And until next time.